What's going on, everyone? Justin again, as always. Thanks for watching my channel. Welcome back. Today I'm going to share with you some 6-liter tips. So those of you that have Ford F-250, Ford F-350 turbo diesel pickup trucks, and you're curious about some of the things that you can do to either remove injectors or tips for like cylinder head removal, things like that, stay tuned. I'm going to share with you some photos and a couple of video clips, and then I'm going to talk to you about some other things that I found that were helpful during the process. So that being said, let's roll right into it. I'll share with you some video clips and pictures, and then we'll talk about some other helpful tips as well.
Hopefully everybody can see that. You got this 19mm socket on a fuel injector for the 6.0. You kind of work it back and forth over the connector like a D's. Start on the one, and you just kind of rock it back and forth while pulling on the other end. Sometimes it's easier without the breaker bar. Sometimes. Like so, and then you push it through. And then we'll get the last one here real quick. Pacha, pacha, like that. All right, another trick. This is a T40 that I've shaved down for the injectors to try to speed things along. So I've already cracked all these loose with the breaker bar. Let me get in here and show you here. That's one. Get in here. Oh, if I can see, God damn it. Oh. Where are we? Okay. If I get another one up here. There you go. And then I think it's right here. Hang on. I had it last time. Okay. Yeah. Where are you? Right here. Memo. 1, 2, 3, 4 injectors. Like that.
Believe it or not, I think it actually was a little bit faster to pull the heads off with the cab on than to pull the cab, but maybe that's just me and how I did it. Here's that topside creeper I was telling you about, and here's how much padding I had. Still digs into my ribs, but I'll tell you what, it's better than leaning over something like this. So, food for thought. Pretty nice to have. Alright, so before we talk about some of the other helpful tips and suggestions that I have for you guys when it comes to Ford 6-liter turbo diesel engine repair / overhaul, I want to say happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. We've made it another year. Our children are still alive and well and doing good because of our hard work, so I want to give a big shout out to all the fathers out there for kicking ass every single day. As hard as a job as it seems to be a mechanic, it's even harder to be a dad and to make sure you're a good dad at that. So let me throw that out there. Big shout out to you guys. Alright, so other helpful tips and suggestions. Look, when working with the Ford 6-liter turbo diesel, you're going to run into a situation if you decide to do valve cover gaskets on your own where you're going to need a 12mm deep, because the studs that stick up that hold part of the module, the injector module on the side of it, I think that's what it is, of the valve cover. And then you got the thickum on the other one that you're going to need to disconnect. You're going to need to squeeze both tabs on both sides. So don't just try to squeeze the one. There's actually a squeezing point for both sides. You got to kind of squeeze them in together and pull it down evenly. Now, something that usually happens is dirt, debris, and other crap gets in there. So do yourself a favor. I don't have one in front of me, but take an air gun and try to just gently blow around those connectors and get all the dirt and debris out of it. You might even take some kind of electrical contact cleaner and just hit it real briefly with it and then spray it again with the compressed air to get it in there. It's going to help you to kind of free and wiggle that stuff up. Thickum connectors, they break pretty often because it was a poor design. Now you can use a series of like 2 zip ties or even 3 zip ties to pull it all together to hold it on there if that so happens, so you're not having to buy an entire injector harness. So that's another trick for you guys should that happen to you. Is it suggested? No, you should always buy another harness. But if you can't afford it, I've seen it on a lot of Fords that have come in and out of the shop for sure. Another one is going to be a ground strap on the EGR cooler itself on the driver's side towards the rear. And what I had to do, and I don't have the wrench with me per se, but it's a 10 millimeter stud that comes through, ground strap, then a nut. Well, what happens is that ground strap gets compressed to the point where you can't fit a regular size 10 millimeter open end wrench underneath it. So I actually had to take a 10 millimeter gear wrench, ratchet wrench that I had that I don't use the open side for. I had to actually grind it down to where it was a lot thinner, half the thickness of the actual open end itself, in order to get underneath there, and then I was able to crack the nut loose while holding the stud in place. So that's another little trick and tip for you guys if you run into that. When removing valve covers, we were talking about having the need to use a 12 millimeter 3/8 deep socket to remove the studs that are in the valve cover, but that doesn't actually tell you what to do for the ones that are in the back that you can't get a socket on. Could you go through the fender well and take the fender well out? Yeah. Still going to be a little bit of a challenge. What I found is easier is having some kind of topside creeper and a flexible 12 millimeter ratchet wrench like so. Stick your hand up underneath the evaporative box and then crack it loose and run it out that way, and then you can get back there with your finger and then work it out the rest of the way. So that's another little helpful tip for you. When loosening or taking the tube out of the oil, there's an oil, I don't know what it is, it's like an oil pump or some kind of like deal. There's a huge Allen that goes through it. It sits on top of the injectors. My diesel guys out there can tell me I'm still trying to learn the diesel lingo, okay? So try not to make fun of me too much. I know how to take it apart and put it together. I just keep forgetting what the stuff's called because I haven't worked on it a lot. For the last 12 months, I've been focusing more on the 6.0s than I have anything else. So I'm really trying to build up my lingo. But at any rate, there's an Allen bit back there. You need a mid-size or shallow size 12 millimeter Allen socket on a 1/2 inch ratchet like so, maybe even longer, that you can crack loose and run it out. I think they're only like torqued down to about 26 foot-pounds, so you don't need a lot of pressure, but I'll tell you what, most of those oversized sockets are going to come in 1/2 inch. I find that a comfort grip is actually nice to have for situations like that, so that's another helpful tip. Another one, and I don't have a video clip to show you guys, is that actually on the 6 liter, and Joey showed me this, and I just thought it was like probably the best engineering decision that I've ever seen. But for the 6 liter specifically, the way the belt tensioner is designed is if you pull it hard enough towards you, if you're on the passenger side of the truck, you pull the belt hard enough towards you, it moves the tensioner up just enough. There's a little lever that you push up and you can let go of the belt. It locks it in place, so you don't need to use a 1/2 inch breaker bar to move the tensioner to get the belt off. I thought that was a beautiful design. I wish more manufacturers would go to that design and keep that design because that would just make all the world of the difference. Don't even get me started on Jeep and their 1/2 inch breaker bar that must be like 40 inches long because of how tight that compression is for that hydraulic piston they have on their tensioners. Ridiculous. But at any rate, for the Fords, simple. Pull it back, push the little thing up, let it go, and you're ready to boogie. So I love that feature. So pulling the cab off, not pulling the cab off, which is easier, which is faster? Okay. It does appear to be easier to take the cylinder heads on and off and bulletproof it by putting studs in with the cab off of the truck. You have full access to everything. It could take you the betterment of, now depending on how fast you are, I've seen guys take about a half a day pulling the cab, and I've seen guys, such as myself, take all day to pull the cab. Just depends on what other work you have coming in and out in the meantime. If your sole focus is that one specific truck, it's possible to have the cab off in half a day. But if you have a mixture of a whole bunch of different stuff going on, it might take you the betterment of a day. There's also a lot of extra pieces to the puzzle to put back. You also have to be conscientious of how much cab there is. Is it a king cab, or is it a single cab, or is it a suicide cab? And then you want to make sure you ratchet strap it to the lift so the cab stays stationary and no accidental mishaps happen while you're underneath it, or even worse, while you're gone. And the next thing you know, you come back and the cab is dangling on the ground. So that could happen. You want to make sure you throw a ratchet strap to the cab and then lock it down. Something else that I noticed, we did this with our boss's truck. Once we did that, the rodents still found a way to get up into his truck. Now they had full access because they had an entry point, and he had some old peanuts in a bag, and they just tore that whole entire inside up. There's like crap everywhere, peanuts everywhere, and piss everywhere, and it's just, it sucks. But okay, not taking the cab off, not as bad as you would think. So I had a little bit of a learning curve. I think it took me the betterment of about a day and a half total to remove the cylinder heads and get all the other stuff off. But I also had other things coming in and out in the process while I was waiting to come back to it. I took off less pieces, which I'll throw a card down here, or a little thumbnail down here. There was a lot less pieces to take off, leaving the cab on. It was definitely difficult to remove the head solo mio. I need somebody else along the side to help lift the head up onto the top side creeper so I could get it out. Now, all data will show you a special lifting bracket. I didn't see one available on Amazon, so what my plan is for the beginning of this week when I go back to work, I'm going to grab the old gasket, the old EGR cooler gasket, bring it home, find a piece of 1/4 inch steel, try to make myself a lifting or a hoisting bracket of some kind here at the house, take it back to work, and when I get ready to install the heads, see how well it works. So that's my goal. Unless I find one on the internet, but then again, it might be actually kind of cool to see a special tool made. Now, I've made a few special tools already for the Ford 6-liter, i.e. I shaved down the 10mm, and then I've cut my T30 down in half and my T40 down in half just to get the injectors and the oil cooler off as well. So I've made some special adaptions for sure. I've also had some special tools that I picked up, like the flat tappet wrenches from Husky that seem to hold up really well for the diesel fuel lines, but there is some oversized stuff like 21mm that you're going to run into that I just used a regular wrench for, and I was okay. Rust penetrant's going to be your friend for exhaust stuff. Even in the desert, even though we're not in a rust belt area, it's still one of those things that you're going to want to use to make sure you don't break anything, because rust does build up on these things. Don't know why, it's just attracted to rust. So those are my tips for the Ford 6-liter guys out there, or guys that are working on Ford 6-liter. I hope that it helps you. If so, leave it a thumbs up, put a comment down below. If you've got another little trick or tip or something that you'd like to share, put it down below too. And before we leave, I'll end on this. You're gonna need to take little breaks here and there as it is while you're working on this thing, because I spent so many hours in that topside creeper, it literally dug into my rib. My ribs felt bruised at the end of the day. Your boy was hurting. And I've heard of a handful of other people that says their bellies hurt at the end of the day. My belly didn't hurt, but I'll tell you what, my lower ribs sure did freaking hurt. In fact, they're still a little bit tender because I worked on it pretty much all day Thursday and half day on Friday. So healing up, glad I had the weekend. We'll see what happens and when these heads are ready to come back and see what it is that we're getting ready to do. But I hope this video helped you guys out. Thanks as always for watching. I appreciate your support. We'll see you next time. Cheers to those of you that have your beers, and deuces.